Listen!
Zelda games have certainly changed a lot over the last few decades. They have jumped around different consoles, platforms, they've all had their own variety of graphical standards and themes, and arguably their own identities. They've also had new stories, new antagonists, and all taking place around different points in time and even timelines. Now, when looking back at the Zelda franchise, a lot of people actually have the opinion that they've been quite linear for quite some time, forcing players to complete dungeons, unlock items, and complete the story within a predetermined sequence with very little deviation. That is until Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom came along and entirely departed from this formula. But now that we've had a taste of both open and linear Zelda games, the question must be asked: what is the future of Zelda gonna look like? What should it look like? Well, games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, as critically praised as they are, have seemingly divided the fans into two main parties. One side can appreciate the innovation, the guts to try something new with a franchise as old as this. And those efforts cannot be understated, with some looking to the games as the new standard for the franchise moving forward. Now, the other side have the opinion that the Zelda games have departed too far away from what we once knew Zelda to be and what we all grew up to love about this franchise. But now that it's been confirmed that Tears of the Kingdom will not be receiving any DLC, and as the game stands right now is how it will be from now to the end of time, let's take a trip down memory lane to look at the pros and cons of both structures being open and linear, and decide once and for all if Zelda should return to its linear roots of old, or if the franchise should remain permanently within this newfound sense of freedom. Now, I did say newfound sense of freedom, but this actually isn't entirely true. Going all the way back to the very first Legend of Zelda game, named Legend of Zelda, we can see that having an open world to explore was woven into the DNA and the first inception of the game's series. It could even be said that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are actually returning to the open world philosophy that was first established in the 1986's Legend of Zelda game. One of the two designers of the game, Shigeru Miyamoto, was quite the little adventurer at a young age. Exploring the caves, forests, and the natural areas around his home as a child, he would use these memories to eventually inspire his work on the Legend of Zelda series. The Legend of Zelda game, releasing in 1986, was wildly praised for its innovative game design, its creative ideas and implementation of puzzles, and generally, its true sense of wonder and freedom that it had captured. Players, for the most part, could walk anywhere they wanted in the world, and it really forced the players to think about what they want to do next. Now, this was in stark contrast to Nintendo's other mascot for the time, Mario, where his games, by comparison, were incredibly linear and didn't really give players that many options at all. In fact, some have argued that given how free and open this first Zelda game was, it actually gave birth to the open world genre itself. Now, throughout the history of sequels, remakes, and spin-offs, there have been 46 entries into the Zelda series, with the latest edition being Tears of the Kingdom. However, not all have carried the spirit of maintaining that level of openness and that sense of freedom that the most recent games have offered. As the series has evolved, we have seen noticeable improvements in the overall graphics. However, this has come at a cost. Given the limitations in the hardware, a decision, or as some see it, a compromise, had to be made. Do we limit graphical fidelity and progress and polish to maintain this setting of an open world, this adventurous feeling, or do we put the players on a more linear track to provide them with a more tailored, deliberate, and purposeful mode of storytelling that has the added benefit of a better looking world? Now, obviously, looking to the various sequels and spin-offs that would follow, it was clear that the overall direction for the Zelda games moving forward was to have their gameplay move into a more linear setting. That's not to say that there weren't open areas to explore. However, most things from the story's progression, unlocking items, accessing certain areas, obtaining weapons, all had to be completed within a very specific and sequential turn of events and within the parameters set by the game's script. Now, to some, this was actually quite welcome, as it provided an element of structure and it allowed a larger emphasis to be placed on the story. This linearity would actually become so associated and ingrained in the Zelda franchise that when they returned to the open world setting in the most recent games, a common complaint that people had was it just wasn't enough Zelda. Linearity and structure became so synonymous with the franchise that deviating away, moving back into the original idea of what this game should have been all the way back in 1986 became problematic for some people. Now, people aren't to blame for this because given how long this franchise has been running, your introduction to the franchise will drastically shift your perspective or perception as to what a Zelda game should be. If you got in when it was Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, your perception is that it should be completely open world. However, if you started maybe 1 to 2 decades ago, you might have the feeling that Zelda games should be quite linear. What this has done is it's created this very messy situation where no one can agree on what a Zelda game should play like anymore. And they take their arguments online. And boy howdy do we know how people like to bitch about things online. Now, as previously alluded to, having the linear games allows for a much larger emphasis to be placed on the game's storytelling and narrative. Game developers can tailor certain story beats and trigger cutscenes in controlled environments. Players can be guided along a predetermined path, which can then have much larger payoffs and by design have longer lasting impacts. There really is a greater sense of build-up as everyone is on the same track. Conversely, in an open world setting, players by that very nature are free to tackle almost any mission in any way they see fit. Now, players can and have spawned into the game and ran straight to the very end, kicking Ganon's very well-toned, masculine, beekeeping daddy ass. Now, everyone who has played Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have completed the main story missions, the side story missions, and all the miscellaneous tasks in completely different orders. This means that there really is no synchronicity across a story, meaning experiences between players can wildly vary. The commonality between players would be the overarching story, but even that can take place whenever a player decides. Players in a way can create their own narratives, which can be both a positive and negative for the game. On paper, this sounds amazing, but is this something suitable for a Zelda game? Now, moving into one of the biggest staples of a Zelda game are its weapons and items. These are crucial for your development in the game and often mark a milestone for your progression or getting to a certain point in the actual game. However, the handling of items and weapons varies greatly between both open world and linear settings. In the linear Zelda games, the items reflect your triumphs over obstacles. They were often given to you for completing certain areas or tasks or progressing up until a particular point. They signified your achievement in getting as far as you have, but also represent tools to use in overcoming future endeavors. Once unlocked, they would stick with you for the rest of your adventure. They become a permanent part of your arsenal and a tool to navigate the world. And some of these weapons or items allowed you to access new areas that were once cut off, so they also represented a way to explore the world in new and meaningful ways. And the items and weapons in the newer games have understandably been one of the biggest pain points for many longtime Zelda fans. To some, both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have taken a very apathetic approach to their items, seemingly offering them up to players at any given moment without a care as to how this impacts or changes gameplay. As the supply of these weapons and items have become so plentiful, their importance and impact have greatly declined. Arguably, the newer games have taken away the impact and significance of those weapons and items, so naturally the player also feels less of a connection to them. That mixed with the fact that there's a huge push for this non-permanency in the game with the durability system, it's easy to understand why players don't really give a shit about what they pick up anymore. Weapons have now become a simple resource, a temporary tool that are easily replaceable and quickly forgotten. On top of that, there's simply no build-up to unlocking items or weapons anymore. Look at this build-up. Look at the moment of anticipation. It's a moment of payoff. It's full of excitement and it's a momentous occasion. It's validating, made only more rewarding if this is given to you after overcoming a boss or a dungeon area. How do the new games handle opening big important chests that might contain very powerful items?
Bruh.
It's very anticlimactic, and again, if the game seems like it doesn't care, then that sentiment is also passed on and transferred to the player. Why should they care if the game clearly doesn't? And this only holds more true to the most powerful weapon in the game, the Master Sword, and this shits me to no end. This is a sword that is said to have limitless power, but after using it for a small amount of time, it needs to have a 10-minute recharge.
I'm taking a nap!
You want to take a nap?
I'm taking a nap here.
Okay, take a nap right there then. Good night.
Good night.
So you can see just how different weapons and items are handled in a linear or open world setting. But let's now get into the exploration. The locations, topography, and traversal are all incredibly crucial to a Zelda game. After all, the world you are dropped into will be your home for the time spent within the game. And Zelda games have had some of the most interesting and inviting level designs, all invoking a wide range of emotions, and Tears of the Kingdom has absolutely nailed this sense of exploration. It still blows my mind to this day that you can go from Sky Islands, drop down to the surface, and then continue falling through to what is essentially the third map in one seamless fall, no loading screens or glitches, all running on the Switch. I don't understand how they did that. Now I think every Zelda game has absolutely dominated in the sense of exploration and the world design. And I'm talking both linear and open. Every game with their unique sense of style, graphical settings, and shifts in mood create worlds that are inviting for players to explore. Through all of its iterations, the Legend of Zelda series has never shied away from the fact that the world is imperative to capturing the original inspiration and sense of adventure that mainlines through this whole series. But let's not get too silly with it. There is such a thing as too open, and despite what your girlfriend says, bigger isn't always better.
How long is this going to take?
So clearly there are strengths and weaknesses to both open and linear formats. However, I don't feel like a balance between both is actually impossible. In fact, I think there's already a game out in the Zelda franchise that has achieved this, and it's almost perfect in my mind. Looking to A Link Between Worlds. This is a game where you can tackle almost anything in any order that you want. The items can be obtained whenever you want through the shop rental system, so they are as free and readily available as they are in the newer Zelda games. However, they have very specific use cases and can be used in very specific situations where nothing else can replace them, which maintains their importance from the older Zelda games. Now, to appease the older Zelda fans, these items don't have a durability meter. However, there is still an option to lose them if you die while only hiring them out, which means that if you're in a dungeon or you're somewhere where you need that item and you die, you're gonna have to figure it out. Now, for those who like structure, a few of the dungeons and the areas in the world need to be done in a particular order, which provides players with that guidance that people are looking for. And it also provides that emphasis on the storytelling. But then after that, there are also so many dungeons and areas in the game that can be approached and completed in any different order that the player sees fit, which also fulfills the needs for players who like that sense of freedom and choice. Now, I honestly believe that we do not need to rewrite and restructure what a Zelda game is. I believe that the quintessential Zelda game is somewhere in the mix of the established and already released Zelda games. A game that provides some kind of structure but also allows for legitimate exploration. A game that has traditional Zelda elements without simply falling in line to a predetermined formula that has been repeated countless times. But I want you to let me know in the comments down below what your dream Zelda game looks like. Is it linear? Is it open world? Is it a mix of the both? And also while you're down there, go ahead and let me know what your favorite Zelda game is as well. I want to thank the coffee supporters on screen now. If you do want to become a coffee supporter and get these longer videos early, go ahead and become a coffee supporter. If you like the video or like this kind of content, don't forget to leave the video a like, sub to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye.